Welcome, I'm Bill Wake. This is my weekly summary of the work we've been doing on Twitch. Lately, we're working on Fiume. It's a personal finance tool to help you manage money medium to long term. And this week, we focused on, well, first off, I'll show toggles. We added the idea that any element you create in your plan can be turned on or off. It could be a job or an expense, or it could be a set of scenarios or a group of items. Any of those can be brought in or out, and that kind of helps you do some quick adjusting and get rid of plans that completely don't make sense for you. Then we added a new report. It's net income by month. So this is useful in the sense to kind of make sure across the long term, are you spending less than you earn? Okay. It ignores your assets and liabilities. So it really is just income and expenses. We started off with a full-sized view for one scenario, and then we modified it to show all scenarios as little thumbnails, and you can click to zoom in for more information on it. And then finally, we started working on the idea of date assumptions. So I'd like to be able to do things like say, suppose Social Security starts in 2040, or suppose I die in 2217. Any of these kind of things. And we'd like to be able to make plans depend on them. And then we have them assumptions. There'll be a slider you can kind of control where you fit on that and do some analysis. So with the U.S., if a spouse dies, the other spouse may get, well, there's sort of several possibilities, but there's a potential death benefit. There's something that's sort of like Social Security, but it's the survivor benefit or your Social Security, and you can kind of trade off between those depending when one spouse dies and which one you're taking and all that stuff. And with data assumptions, we basically have the the objects together. We just started work on the editing and the views. I'm not sure it's worth. I'll show you what we have, but it's not coming along yet. All right. Let's do a little demo and see some code. So right away you can see these toggles. So each one controls something in or out. So if I turn off everything, I just get a flat line. There's nothing visible. I don't turn off these because I think you probably want to turn them on. You'd like to go back to the same thing and that sort of thing. So there's ways to do it. But what I noticed right away with this set of assumptions is, it looks like 4 plans do really well and 4 plans don't do very well. And my suspicion is I had this choice where I either get a second job for $800 a month or I buy a boat, which sounds fun. But notice I'm at negative $1.5 million. Okay, and let's turn off the boat and see what that does. Well, all that leaves is the plans that are close to $1 million. It was a very expensive boat. It doesn't sound like terribly much, but the fact is, in 30 years, you're down $1.5 million from it. And even in this is 20 years. You can feel it. It's $300,000 down or something. And, so I'd like to be able to turn things on and off quickly and just get the impact of these plans, the results of these plans from that. And then like with this one, if I see the boat is just a disaster financially, I can take that off and leave it off. I could even delete it and say, I'm just not going to, I'm not going to take that path. Okay. All right. And then the second big thing we worked on is the notion of net income by month. So this is your net worth, which is sort of assets plus income minus liabilities minus expenses. The net income by month is just income and expenses. So what you get is each little thumbnail graph is one scenario. And so you can see this one, you're headed down pretty desperately. I guess the boat's still in there. Yeah. Okay. Let's turn that off. Okay. So with all these, without the boat, you can see your actual net is that sort of blue line tracking pretty close to zero. your income and expenses are pretty well balanced at this point. There's a little play, but they're more or less balanced. Okay, so that gives you kind of a good feeling, like, oh well, most of these plans I'm looking at aren't going to hurt me from that sense. If I have a reasonable pile of assets to start with, I'm basically breaking even. Now these are controlled by assumptions, and like this one, the growth is based on this ROI. That's a little funny. It should probably be something else, but we can manipulate this, and if the ROI growth is low, well, not so much. If it's high, we're probably going to feel some impact. Yeah, it shifts it all into negative territory. So if your expenses grow, 20%, and your inflation, it looks like a stock portfolio is based on inflation. This one's on ROI. There's offsetting things, but only one of these scenarios looks safe if that 20% holds. Back in a more normal time, it may not be so bad. Okay, and what you can do with these is you can go look at them and get details. So this one, we have Social Security for the two spouses kicking in at different times, and you can see when that income stream comes in, your line goes from slightly negative to not too bad, and then the second one kicks in, and you have growth on it, but you're growing income, but your line is still high. I mean, it's trailing down just a hair, but it's this is 30 years worth. You don't really think it's going to have to last another 450 years, at least not under present technology. All right, but it gives you more ways to kind of control things. So you have this notion of, you can make scenarios that split out multiple possibilities. You can turn things on and off. You can control these rates, and we're going to add control of dates, but we don't have any display for it yet. But I can show you a little piece of it. In our dates right now, you can specify, you can take an unbounded date, kind of starts whenever the scenario starts and ends when it ends. You can get a specific month and year. You can base it off somebody's age, or you can base it off this assumed date, in which case there will be a slider eventually. So you'll select a date to use, adjust it. Right now there are only two. They're just kind of dummy ones, none in default, and I don't even have it active enough to save that. So it's just a piece of where we're going. But in the long run, your scenarios can depend on that. And so I think end month, for maybe your Social Security has an end month based on when you die. That's going to affect you and affect your spouse potentially. So we have those things coming along. Okay, so let's look at some code. So the toggle, it's actually not much going on for it. We basically took our plan object, which represents layers, which is liability, expense, income, or asset. So those sort of single line additions. It also represents groups, which are a list of, accounts or money streams that fit in. They're all together. It's an and we also have scenarios that do an or, that say this or that or the other. So all of those are controlled through plan, and we add the flag here, and that's what controls the toggle. So here's the plan view. It had the icon, the name, and some buttons, but we've added this thing. It's a toggle. We hide the label, so it's just the bare little green slider thing, and that made that happen. It's like it went nice and fast. It's nice to have something that does that once in a while. Let's get the next one. Is the income views, and this one basically there's the initial view with the thumbnails, and that's controlled by this. So navigation stack, because you can open up the individual summary, but the sort of interior view of this is walking through all the scenarios. So one plan with possibilities generates all these scenarios, and each scenario has its own net income from that. And so the net income view it's the same view. It's just shrunk down dramatically when it's thumbnail size, and it shows for that one scenario. You probably could do, well, it might be worth making different views for those. I don't know. I'm happy enough with the way it is. All right. Okay, so this is the one scenario at a time, and it's really not too much. The chart is doing all the work for us. We feed in a structure that gives us net worth by month for one scenario, and we calculate the income area, and that's green, and the expense area, and that's red, and then the rule, which is the little horizontal line telling the income minus the expenses, and down here is just styling to get the colors matched up right. So once you have the data structure, which we worked on last week, or I showed you last week, this graph is very trivial. The information is just sitting there. You can grab it, by income or expense and all that. It's very easy. All right, and then the data assumptions, that's the new thing. So we have a class or a collection of them. You might have one for, I stop working on this, or spouse one stops working, spouse two stops working, spouse one dies, spouse two dies, spouse one collects Social Security, any of these things that you might want to control by the slider. And so the collection, you got add, find, remove, replace, get the current, and get the count. It's all pretty much collection methods, just like you'd expect. I'm not going to walk through them. All right, and then the data assumption, there's really not much to it. The core of it, it's really just a data bag at this point. I mean, it has an ID, so you can track it on screen. It's got a name, like death date, and it has min, max, and current values. I've just left them as ints for year numbers, and that's really all there is to it. You can hash them, so we can put them in the view, and put them in the view needs a hash sometime, but really it's just holding that value, and we can update it with a new current value. So that's pretty straightforward, very simple. And then we started doing the view, and this is basically it's based on that collection. If the collection is empty, we show a content unavailable, and it just puts up a little icon that says, there's no data. Otherwise, we're just going to show the options that you've got. So we put up a little text, and then this picker runs through the selections, runs through the data assumptions through that singleton method, and gets us access to those. Basically, that will show the names for each assumption. Okay, and you're just picking one of those to do it. We might be able to show the current value at some point, but given that's controlled by something else, I'm not sure there's a lot of benefit to it. But we have some stuff we're trying to straighten out, and one of them is selection. There's a little bit of a dance you have to do, because if you come into a picker with a selection that's not in the list, it gets upset. So right now, well, this is sort of in the list, but it's kind of temporary. But we don't, in general, we won't have something in the list to select from. So I'm going to have to work out. I think you have to update that value when this thing finishes drawing, or I don't know, some point early on. Once this thing exists, then you can say, I'm not sure the pattern to do that, but we need to do that, whatever it is. And I think there's also I'm not clear we're actually updating anything when you finish, and that piece is all just in motion. It's what we'll focus on next week. All right, so next week, view and edit date-based assumptions. We may have some other refactoring, but we're nearing the end of this project. I think it's pushed about as far as I want to go for the stuff I want to look at, and we'll find a new project. It might take one more week, but I think this week should do it. All right. If you want to join us, we're on Twitch Monday to Thursday, 2 to 4:30 Eastern Time, or 6 to 8:30 p.m. UTC. xp123.com/Twitch takes you to the live session, and xp123.com/YouTube takes you to the old sessions, time delayed a week or so, and lightly edited. Thanks for watching. Hope you can join us sometime. Bye-bye.